'Cause I'm in the stars tonight. So watch me bring the fire, set the night light. Shoes on, get up in the morning, cup of milk, let's rock and roll. Kink out, kick the drum, rolling on like a rolling stone. Sing song when I'm walking home, jump up to the top of the brown. Ding dong, call me on my phone, nice tea and I'll get my ping pong. This is dead heavy, can't hear the bass, boom, I'm ready. Life is sweet as honey, yeah, this beat chain like money. This go all alone, I'm into that, I'm good to go, I'm diamond, you know I glow. Hey, so let's go. 'Cause I'm in the stars tonight, so watch me bring the fire, set the night light.
All right, what is up, guys? I'm Kevin Danielis,
And I'm Olivia.
and we are the Supreme Scrubs Podcast. Right now, it is episode 5, and we are going to be getting into quite a bit of topics today. How about we start with the first one, Liv? Lately, in the world, or actually in the nation, I'm sorry, there's been a lot of politics going on.
Yes, there has.
So at my job, on the TV, there's always some kind of news on the television. So, of course, there's nothing else to listen to. And patients, of course, always start to bring up the subject since it's on the TV. So politics at work, is it good or bad?
It's not a good idea.
Yeah. Why do you think so?
I don't know. I guess I was always taught there's just certain things you don't discuss at work, and it was always money, religion, and politics were just kind of off the table. So I just don't talk about it at work.
I hear you. I grew up Filipino, and everything that you could ever want to talk about is all on the table. So I honestly just learned that you're not supposed to be talking about money, politics, or religion because that's probably all Filipinos ever talk about. So it's new to me. However, with that being said, I see the negative impact that talking about politics at work creates. I feel like it creates tension when people don't, agree with each other. Thank you. I could just tell there's a little bit of maybe anger when the news is talking bad about a certain someone. We try to keep it neutral here on Supreme Scrubs. However, I don't know, do your coworkers, do your patients ever try to speak to you?
No, not really. I mean, we don't have any TVs in our waiting room, luckily, and our radio station that's on is just regular songs. There are no commercials. It's like a Sirius, so there's no kind of advertisements or commercials or anything. And I don't know. I guess it just doesn't come up. I guess with what I'm doing, it doesn't come up.
Yeah, I guess you have a little bit of a younger population.
We do.
I have a bit of the elderly population, so that's, of course, all they pay attention to. So it's bound to come up. Recently, there was the attack on the Capitol building, the terrorist attack. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to call them protesters. That's just facts. We're still being neutral here. That's just facts. And it led to the second impeachment of President Trump. According to Congress, at least. It still has to go through Senate and everything. Do you want to give any thoughts on that at all, or do you want to stay neutral here?
I'm just not going to make any comments.
Wow. All right.
There's certain things we don't talk about.
For those of you that cannot see us, Olivia's wearing a red cap with white letters on it, and there's about five words. Oh, that's 4 words. It's about 4 words.
Such a joke.
All right. Sorry. Anyways, so we'll stay neutral on that. I do want to say that it was a bad attack. It was embarrassing for the nation. Nobody gained anything from it. Congress decided on what they decided. I think people are curious as to what's going to happen. Even if he does get impeached with about a week left in his presidency. And, I looked up what it would mean, and it would mean he wouldn't be able to run again in 2024. He wouldn't get the same Secret Service protection post-presidency, and he wouldn't get the same pension, about $200,000 each year pension for being president. So, it's things to just, keep in mind if you're ever wondering, like, why is this going on anyway? However, this is not a social studies class. This is a nursing podcast.
Nursing.
So I'll stick to what I know, and
that's nursing.
And the politicians, and that's nursing, and politicians will stick to what they know. So we'll move on to a little bit of kind of still politics, but within nursing. There's always a lot of slander here with nurse management. Do you have any quick takes on that?
I guess nurse management, what bothers me is when there's people in the management position that are not nurses or that are not boots on the ground, have not they don't have that.
Are you talking about like administration that has no idea what it's like
administration, but there's even managers I've had in the past that don't have any hands-on clinical experience. They have an education, which put them where they're at, which is great, but they don't have that real life experience to be able to work off of. So there's just like this, lack of understanding of what really goes on, and that just bothers me, because if you're running something, you should be really familiar with it and actually have done it.
I agree. I think that definitely helps. With any job, one of the main requirements is for you to have experience. So I agree with you. I think it's important that administration or upper management should have some kind of background in what they would be managing. In my previous experiences with nurse managers, when I started out as a PCA or a CNA in 2015, I had a great nurse manager, or someone that was managing me, the director of our unit. He accepted me. He had open communication. Whenever I did something wrong, it would be nice and private. It was just seemed more professional. Eventually, he left. We got a new manager on our unit. She was new, and things just kind of took a turn for the worse. I did know her. She as a nurse. She was my preceptor when I started nursing, and then she became the director. But it just seemed like she worried too much about forcing people to respect her instead of kind of losing that kind of human side that you kind of still have to have as a manager. When she turned out to be the director, so it wasn't a great experience with her. We did work together. You've worked with her as well. What do you think?
I agree with what you're saying. It was more of a respect thing. Like, I demand respect.
Yes.
And it was more of a, I don't know, not a democracy where you work together. More of like, well, this is what I say.
Yeah, like a dictatorship.
I demand. This is what I want, and this is what we're gonna do, kind of thing.
Right.
So I didn't really care for the style of management. No.
Like, for example, I was still a new nurse at the time, and she also just started being director, like I said. And we were about to give handoff report. I'm coming off shift. She's coming on to the shift. So she tells me that she knows the patient. This was around the time where bedside report was a little more strict, and the patient happened to be in isolation. The patient was sleeping, and we took it upon ourselves to just stay at the doorway. This private room, the bed happened to be not too far from the doorway, but you guys can probably picture the reason why we got in trouble. My director usually used to watch us give report. I'm sure you remember that as well.
I do.
And she happened to walk around the corner. She sees us at the doorway giving a report, and it seemed like the end of the world. It seemed like we happened to kill the patient. We were about maybe 30 seconds away from finishing up report, and she comes around the corner and she tells us, hey, you guys have to gown up. It's not bedside report. We try to let her know that the nurse happened to have the patient the other day. There was no need to go in depth, no need to wake the patient up. And she did not care. And a couple of days later, I got written up for insubordination, and she fired the other nurse.
Wow.
And that not just because of that scenario, I don't think, but maybe
Set the
that was
tone.
like the last straw. But it just seemed like she was exactly trying to set the tone that like, hey, you guys better be on your best behavior or else this may happen to you. And that other nurse, like when I was saying before, you still have to have like a human side to you. Like that nurse is like a single mom, you know, the hospital, everyone knows the hospital pay is always great. You know, she's putting her son through private school, things like that. And, you know, it just didn't sit right with everyone. And luckily I still know the nurse to this day. I still work with her. She's still a great nurse. She still hasn't changed, in a good way, because I know how she is as a person. And that was just a little background story for them to know, like, what we kind of dealt with this specific unit manager.
I have a similar story. We used to work on oncology hospice, so a lot of our patients that we did have were hospice. Their families were allowed to stay with them all the time, 24/7. And I had a patient, it was in the morning, handoff report, and I did it outside the room because the family had asked for that. They wanted to spend those last days with their loved one, and they were just tired of hearing twice a day someone coming in and saying the same story over and over again,
Right.
how we found him unconscious and then just went downhill, now he's on hospice and we're just waiting. It's hard to hear that.
I agree.
So they kind of had mentioned it, and I could see that they're upset, so I stood outside and did a report, and I got in trouble too. What are you doing outside the room? And I just said, I'm an advocate for my patient. The family doesn't want me in there repeating the same story over and over again in front of them. I don't think I should.
Yeah.
This is their time.
I agree.
Let them be. There's no need for me to go in and do bedside report for whose benefit. Whose
No,
benefit
definitely.
is that for? Nothing has changed. We're waiting.
Yeah. And honestly, there was a time where this all started before you got there, and I did bring that up to even the CNO of nursing at the hospital. And I told her, like, hey, like, what about for, like you said, our hospice patients, end of life patients with families in the room, and they don't want to hear that over and over again. And her response was, well, one of my family members was dying, and I loved to hear report over and over again.
You.
Yeah, right. And that's what I was thinking.
Because I wouldn't want to hear it.
That's just you out of these other people where you're used to this. Mm-hmm. You probably like seeing the professionalism, blah, blah, blah. These other people are like, they relive this moment over and over again every
That's
time
the thing.
we
Everyone on
give
hospice
report.
isn't an old sick person. I've taken care of people in their 20s on hospice that it was an unfortunate accident, and given the accident and what happened, they just never came to again, kind of thing. So it was in a matter of days. You had someone with you walking, talking, and now we're waiting for them to die. So to give report and hear that over and over again,
Definitely.
it's hard. And not even just our hospice patients. You've had new diagnosed cancer patients, and I had a patient say to me who was lucid, just found out she had cancer, diagnosed the day before, say to me, can you stop saying this whole story in front of me? Like, I can't believe that I didn't have cancer. I just found this out 2 days ago, and it's making me depressed to keep hearing over and over again.
And nurse management's not going to hear that.
But I came in and this would happen. I had a simple backache, and now I have cancer everywhere, and I didn't know it. And I said, yeah, absolutely. I'm not, I don't care. I'll step outside.
Yeah, it's just crazy that sometimes nurse management, they just don't take your word for it. They're kind of like my way or the highway kind of thing. Like, also when I was about to leave the hospital, I had maybe like 7 days left, and they still made me go to like a mandatory in-service or, phlebotomy training or something like that. And it just blows the mind. You can't speak to one person. Hey, this guy's about to leave in 7 days. Can we just, can we understand that he doesn't need this? This is not benefiting anyone. And they still made me go, and I still went, and for purposes of, possible, not rehire, but like having to work with this company again. But it's just crazy that they only look at numbers, whatever they're told above them. So yeah, for those that are becoming nurse managers, like,
keep that in mind.
yeah, keep that in mind.
I have to say, my manager now is really great.
Yeah, I was about to say that too. Mine
she's
is
not
great
clinical,
now.
and she doesn't make comments on clinical things. She comes to the people who are clinical to say, okay, well, how does this work? What could work better? Which I appreciate, because she doesn't know. She's not a nurse. She doesn't have that background, so it's nice that she doesn't try and get involved when she doesn't really know the full scope of it.
Yeah, same with my manager. Same exact thing. Not clinical. Respects our word, takes our word for it. Respects what we, the things we need or ask for. But also do have a nurse manager at my job, and she's also great. She was the assistant director when I first started in the hospital, and everyone knows that she's easy to talk to. She's easygoing, and that's kind of one of the aspects you can't really lose about yourself if you ever go into nurse management. But how about we jump into our last topic here? This was requested by Angela, actually.
Oh, okay.
She was on the show during the Filipino episode, but she brought up the importance of looking at acuity versus the number of patients that you have, which I think is important. Did you ever deal with like an assignment where you're like, wow, like I have 7 patients and they're all easy, or like, wow, I have 4 patients, but they're all like kind of like, as you would say, circling the drain?
Yeah. I've had on the old where I used to work, 7 patients. Maybe 2 out of the 7 are hospice, and then the other ones are med surge. So your hospice patients, you're not, and it depends. Everyone's different. I shouldn't say that, because every hospice patient's different.
Sometimes they need pain meds every hour,
yes,
right?
Yes, every hour you're in there. Plus, if there's family there, and it's not even so much about the patient; it's comforting the family. But then, you do have some that there is no one there with them, and you're really just going in and managing, keeping an eye on them. They're usually unconscious, but still, you need to go in there. You need to, especially. And my patients that were alone, I always felt like I needed to be there more because I didn't want them to be alone.
Definitely.
But I've also been on units where I've been floated to step down ICU, and I only had 2 patients, but they were heavy patients.
Yeah.
It made me more nervous to almost have those 2 because there were so many issues going on with them, and I was a new nurse, so it was very overwhelming.
You didn't have the instant click of like, all right, I got to start with this and then go from there. So yeah, that's definitely tough. I think it's really hard. It's probably really hard for like management to see like what is a difficult patient, because you don't know unless you have the patient. So I understand it from that point, but I do still think there probably should be a way to kind of make a scale about that.
Well, there
about
should
the
be.
acuity, like maybe a charge nurse can like kind of scale them on like, this is high acuity, this one's not so bad, or this one needs this, which some good charge nurses do.
Some do. They really look into the assignment, but like where we used to work, it was a matter of how many nurses are here and how many people are on the unit. Okay, and they counted down and they just split it off, and you're like, oh, that's great. We all have 4, but my 4
suck.
are all need full-on care, and then that other person who has 4, they're all young walkie-talkies, just here overnight kind of thing. So it would have been nice to maybe have 2 walkie-talkies, too complicated. Someone else has the same. You split it up a little.
For more of a balance, I could definitely see that. But again, it's probably hard for them to see, which is why they probably just don't go by acuity. They just go by number of patients.
You ask your boots on the ground.
Yeah.
How was your assignment today?
That'll be a good way to do it. But they don't. They change. They want to do bedside report, but they don't want to change like acuity, right? You know what I mean? Like that'll be more helpful to nurses. Of course, I definitely understand that a lot of patients prefer bedside report, but my thing was you should still be able to trust the nurse's judgment when bedside report was needed and not needed, and plus you're talking to the patient throughout your entire shift. usually.
Mm-hmm.
But that was that. This is now. For my job now, we deal with like between like 20 to 30 patients a day. But sometimes the acuity is low. Sometimes they just need injections or IV hydration. Other times I'm giving like 3-4 chemos just to one person. So I still kind of deal with the acuity versus number of patients still. You think you could relate to it at your job?
I can't relate to it. I deal with all young, healthy women for the most part. We have
Yeah,
occasional the elderly patient,
But that doesn't necessarily mean acuity. I guess in terms of difficult patients.
Well, there's always gonna be difficult patients, but that's just how the person is personally. You know, generally everyone is like healthy. They're childbearing age. You know, that's usually how it is. There's some people that are just more complicated just because of who they are. But
I guess the main thing is like the issues that need to be addressed.
Well, yeah.
Like if you have a long list of issues that need to be addressed, that's always gonna.
The thing is that we don't have a way of setting that. Like, okay, this one's really complicated, this one's not. We don't. They have to have appointments. You know what I mean?
Us don't like we
they're
don't
a
either.
provider, so they have to be seen, and it is what it is.
At my job, we just schedule them earlier so we could deal with everything like in the morning and then kind of settle them in throughout the day. So, all right, well, let's jump into our segments. The very famous one we'll start with is Fight or Flight. Okay. We will start off. I'm assuming our listeners know what this is by now. Hopefully, our loyal 5 followers. We have more. We shout out to you guys. We love you guys. But we're gonna jump into Fight or Flight. Our first little topic here is: would you rather have 2 difficult or high acuity patients or 6 med-surg patients? Relating to the previous topic we just spoke about.
You go first.
I go first. Okay. I think I would rather have 6 med-surg patients.
Okay.
Because I just think 2 difficult or high acuity patients, I know ICU does it all the time. I just haven't been in that position yet. And maybe like since I don't know how to address those certain issues, which is why I'm choosing 6 med-surg patients. Like I'm more familiar with it. But I'd rather take my chance that 4 or 5 of those are generally gonna be okay, and I'll just have to deal with 1 or a few with a couple issues compared to 2 where I'm thinking I gotta call out RRT any second, or they're gonna need a procedure done, so I gotta set them up for something. I don't know. That's a lot. That's like a lot already to think about. I'd rather take my chance maybe with 6 med-surg patients.
I guess the same. I don't know, because I have, like I said, I went to step-down ICU where I had no experience and no business going. I got floated there.
Yeah, I remember that.
I had a charge nurse at the time that let me go. I wasn't even 6 months up for orientation.
All right, so I'm going to make this clear. I was the charge nurse that night. However, I was already given a report when they told me that they needed another nurse.
And he chose
so I had
me.
no way to stop that. It's not that I chose you. It's just that you were not the most like eligible, but it was you. It was you.
Appreciate that. So I have been in that situation of like 2 very high acuity patients.
She's still here to talk about it.
And it was scary. I mean, and the nurses I worked with too, that work on that floor, they were busy all night because they were trying to keep these people alive, and it was nerve-wracking. And like you said, it was always worrying, right? What am I going to call? Yeah. And luckily, there's
monitors,
hospitalist, but like the person for the ICU who's there all the time.
Yeah,
like they don't leave.
the
so
intensivist.
We were able to luckily, call on them, which was great, but it was very nerve-wracking. So I guess the 6 would be better. Granted,
you ended up having a better night that night than we did that night, okay? Our night was horrific.
I had a great team on step-down ICU. They were all great, and they knew that I shouldn't have been there, so they were very nice and generous to give me the lesser of the acuity patients for my assignment.
Well, that's usually how it should be, like for anyone that floats.
Well, it's not how it is. But they were very, very nice, and I appreciated it very much. So I guess I'll take the 6.
All right.
And hopefully they're not
sticking with me with the
complicated patients, just simple, straightforward.
Yeah. I concur. Anyways, next topic. Would you rather deal with or what's worse, I'm sorry, an anti-vaxxer or anti-masker?
Oh, goodness. I guess right now, like today, would be the anti-masker.
Okay.
Just because of how important it is. I mean, vaccines are important too. But I guess, like I said, today, right now, with everything going on, I guess the masker. Anti-masker.
I'm going to have to agree. I just think it's such a small price to pay with everything that's going on in the world.
It's true.
You know, they always say, 1% or 99% of people stay alive. But if you put like that 1% in a couple 100 million people, that leads to like a couple 100,000 people, which makes that number more or bigger than what it sounds like. So like I said, it just seems like a minor inconvenience. It's just crazy. Like I still work in oncology, but just outpatient. And we have actually three patients that refuse to wear their masks. And like, that's where people are most vulnerable to infections. You know, they have cancer, and on top of that, they're getting chemo, which is lowering their white blood cell count or neutrophil count. And they still kind of just are just that selfish. And I remember this one time, this guy, he's just there for something called Rituxan, but not even for cancer. It's for rheumatoid arthritis. And he asked me, do I have to wear my mask all day? And I'm like, yeah, you know, there's going to be other people around the room, you know. You're just going to you'll have to worry about them, you know, being near them and everything. He's like, yeah, I don't think they're going to tell me what to do. And in my head, I'm like, you'd be arguing with like 80-year-old like women, you know, you really
Cancer
feel
patients.
You really feel like tough, like arguing with them, like just get with it. And, you know, other patients always complain about them, like they get furious. So I agree. Anti-masker for sure.
Yeah.
Compared to the anti-vaxxer, which they're annoying too, but you know, at this time, anti-maskers
This
are
is
a little
simple
bit,
things.
a
Putting on a
little bit
mask.
less
You're
of
not
an
putting anything
inconvenience.
into your body that
Right.
you're unsure about. It's just putting on a face
Something over
mask for your neighbor, really. Mm-hmm. I mean, where I am, I've been lucky. The patients have been pretty good. They come in with their masks on. I think we've had like maybe 2 or 3 that didn't want to like put it on, and
Right.
But again, we work with pregnant patients, which
Yeah.
which they just said are high risk, right? Patients for COVID. So we said you gotta put your mask on.
Right.
You know, like I know you're here for a GYN exam, but
Yeah.
we have pregnant patients here, and we have high risk pregnant patients too that are in our building.
For you, the big thing is not letting the husbands
Partners,
in.
yeah, that's
into
the biggest issue
into
is
the rooms.
they want to bring their spouse or their support person, which I get. I totally understand it, especially someone who's pregnant for the first time, or even someone who's had a couple babies. They want that
Yeah,
support
but maybe
system
I've had
there.
a difficult time.
And I understand it, but
It just is
it's
what
just,
it is.
this is how it is
Unfortunately,
now, you
yeah.
know, and
You don't want to spread the virus.
exactly. That's
just
just
the
how it is
safest
now.
option.
And I understand you want to bring your partner, but again, there's someone else here who's more high risk than you are. You know that we can't risk that exposure. And these people, this prenatal care, we don't get to pick and choose and limit, you know, how many people we see. It's prenatal care. People have to be seen. So we're already seeing all these people as it is. We can't add more people to the building. And there's certain situations of someone, you know, God forbid someone has a demise and we're going to bring them in for an ultrasound just to confirm that there is no heartbeat. I mean, that situation will kind of bring, you know, dad in or the support person in through the
You still
back
kinda have
door,
to
and
have
they're
a
going to a
judgment.
private room by themselves, masks and whatnot, just for that situation, because it's, you know, an emotional situation. It's upsetting. We don't want the person driving afterwards, obviously. But otherwise, just like your standard visits and whatnot, no, you have to come alone.
Yeah.
And it just is what it is. And I think back to the beginning of this when we had our pregnant patients in labor by themselves, completely alone, no one with them in the hospital. And that has since changed. Now they're allowed to have one support person. So I always kind of think about those patients.
People,
you know,
they
like how
definitely had it
terrible is
worse.
that? Like first time having a baby and you're completely alone.
You're surrounded by
laboring.
strangers and
alone.
you're like in your
So,
one of your most vulnerable
I guess in
positions.
my mind, it's just
Literally.
your visit, really. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like
It's
at the end is when you want someone there. Do you
maybe
really
like
want
an
someone here
hour.
for every visit? I'd rather have someone with me when I'm laboring for maybe a day.
Yeah. But of course they don't see the big picture.
No, I know.
They're probably just emotional.
I know.
So, anywho, we will continue to our last fight or flight topic. Would you rather be floating too often or getting flexed too often?
I'd rather get flexed too often. I used to float all the time.
This seems like an easier, way to go, but I've been on both sides. There was actually a point in time when I was at community, when I was just getting flexed like every shift, and I was like, I had to use PTO, and of course that sucks because when you need the PTO, you can't use it. So I was almost to the point where I was like, wow, like maybe I shouldn't accept this flex and kind of just pass it along. However, floating kind of sucks too.
It's terrible.
Especially like if you're not a float nurse and you're like supposed to just be on one unit and you're like floating a couple times a week like you did. I've done it like a couple times, not as much as you have.
I floated 3 shifts in a row.
Yeah, no, I believe it. That was when they did the whole like chemo certified or not kind of thing. But at the end of it all, I would still rather get flexed too often because that never really lasts. You'll get floated forever
sure I'll go back
if
to
you're
work.
working in the hospital.
They'll call eventually.
Yeah, they're gonna get busy.
And you can always
eventually.
pick up in the hospital. There's always
Can
a
always
unit that
pick up,
needs
and
something.
then at some point in time, the hospital just always is bound to get busy, obviously, especially now. So I'll stick with you with getting flexed too often.
The floating too is when, when you float. Like when I floated stepped down ICU, I got really lucky that the nurses I was there with were really great,
You do
and they understood that
you get lucky with some
you're
floats.
a brand new nurse, and not for nothing, but you came from the oncology hospice floor. That's not a tele floor. You have no experience caring for these critically ill patients, and you don't do tele.
Right.
So they knew that, and they, instead of saying, well, figure it out, you were
Right.
sent here, they kind of took that into consideration. It's okay, well, who's the lesser of the acuity patients? And they worked with me the whole night, which I really appreciated. But sometimes you go to other floors, and they don't care. You're the float nurse, so they're like, oh, good, the float nurse is here. Here, give them the worst of the worst because you're not here all the time. And we don't want these patients. They've been here so long, and everyone's had these ones, and whatever the situation is, so you get them. And you're just like, okay, and they're high acuity. It's like out of your comfort zone. I think we were a little more limited where we used to work was very specific. We didn't come from just your standard med-surg floor. So a lot of the stuff that I would see on these other units, I wasn't used to seeing every shift. It was like new to me.
Yeah.
And plus also too, there's float nurses who get paid float pay.
Yeah.
So I would be floated all the time, and I was not getting any extra pay for floating. I was getting my standard pay. Meanwhile, like I said, I floated how many times in a row, and it's like, maybe if I got a little extra cash for it, I wouldn't have been as upset. But
that was one of my recommendations as like a new nurse. Like, whoa, like why isn't there like $1 incentive or more, for floating? It would make people call out less. Maybe a little bit less. But yeah, I've had bad flows before. I remember when I floated to 3B, like every nurse kept their assignment, and the one nurse was exhausted from her shift the other night. They happened to call out, and it was because she had such a bad assignment that she called out. And then whoever's floating there is gonna just fill in that spot because everyone else had their patient before. So I had a bad night with that. But sometimes you get a good float. Probably 9 times out of 10, it's probably gonna be bad.
Yeah.
Because you're unfamiliar with everything, but. So, I'd rather get with the flexed.
I'll take
Getting
a flex.
flexed too often. That used to be the best call ever.
Unless you slept all day in preparation, and then you're like,
but
oh
still,
man, I just slept all day for nothing.
I don't know. Nothing beats getting that phone
No, yeah,
call.
I'll still take it. I'll take it.
Definitely. So we're gonna jump into a new segment. We are gonna hit you with nurse fact of the month. I have one. Olivia prepared herself with one of her own. So I guess I'll start with mine because she read mine already. I thought it was gonna be a surprise. But my fact is that 76% of registered nurses report experiencing workplace violence. That was from BeckersHospitalReview.com in 2019.
Oh.
And this isn't just the people that don't report stuff. And I felt like that's a lot.
That is a lot.
Especially like imagine if you're a new nurse and you're like, oh yeah, like I want to help people. Well, 76% of people don't want your help or like think they don't want your help, and they're gonna, they're ready to bash your face for it. So, I actually have a story.
Another story?
Yeah, I know a lot of stories today for this episode. But when I was a PCA, we had a little older nurse. She was Asian. She had blonde hair. Small. She ran funny. So I was taking vitals or doing PM care maybe, and all I hear is Kev, And, as a PCA, you usually go to help, I guess, try to de-escalate, even though I don't know any therapeutic communication at the time. I'm just a PCA. But I run down the hall, I walk into the room, and there's this big older gentleman, pretty fit for an old guy. And I take maybe like 2 steps into the room, and I get punched in the face. And I didn't know what to do. In my head, I'm used to, if you get punched, you square up and you hit someone back. But like I squared up for a second and I realized where I was, and I'm like, whoa, like I'm in scrubs, and like this is like important. Like I can't hit him back. Why would I? It's not gonna help anything. And I punched in the face, and I said, whoa, like are you okay? And luckily, he didn't hit me hard or anything. But still, I just didn't expect to get that kind of wake up call as a PCA. So nothing came of it. I didn't even report it. I'm part of that percentage that don't report the workplace violence, but just because nothing happened. And he was old, he was confused. I feel like those, you just kind of expect those things now.
You see a lot with our old, elderly, confused population.
Oh yeah, they'll scratch you. Yeah,
yeah,
they
they'll
don't
bite.
know what's going on. They're not in their familiar place.
Hit. But then there's also people that are not, and they're just like nasty people. And then for some reason, I don't know why, but it's almost like we're not people. And it's like, and that's okay to like spit and yell and threaten us. And it's like, I'm still a person at the end of the day.
Yeah,
and
I had another guy who wasn't confused. He was just young, and I think he was out of his withdrawal, but he was like still kind of like an asshole. Oh, I don't know if I'm allowed to curse on here, but I'll keep going. And I guess I looked at him for too long. I was a nurse at this time, and obviously I guess I looked at him funny, and then next thing you know, he like came up to my face, and I had to like kind of push him back. And then now we're like circling each other in the hallway, and then they call it code gray, and then, they're talking like, what did he do to you? And then like he just couldn't give like a real answer. So I don't know. Patients are funny.
Yeah, we've had our psych patients too.
Yeah,
we had
exactly.
one in particular that was on our unit for the longest time, and anytime you went in, and you didn't have to even like. You didn't do anything to this guy, and he would just say, you better get a head start. I'm going to pull out my AK,
the AK-47.
And it was all the time, like these constant threats, and no one did anything about it. Like everyone just sat back, and it was like, that's what he says. But it was all the time, and finally one nurse said, I'm just going to say something about this because I just don't think it's right. And within magically 1 week, he was transported out into like a lockdown site.
Yeah, lockdown unit. Oh. You can't do that. You can't threaten a nurse. I think.
But it was a year. It was a year of just threats.
I agree. And he got progressively
worse.
So, people probably didn't mind him as a patient because he didn't have any meds.
Still, though, I was like, what if he really does get out and comes back? Because
you always have to think about that. That's true. So, anyways, what's your fact?
All right. So my fact's more fun.
Oh God.
More to lift the mood.
All right.
So my fact is nurses walk a 5K every shift.
I didn't read that fact. I read something about like the number of steps, but...
It says on average, nurses walk 4 to 5 miles every 12-hour shift they work.
Wow.
Compared to the 2.5 miles on average that like the average person works.
That's got to be day shift.
In a day.
I've worked with a lot of night shifters that don't move. They don't even see their patients.
And this just proves, it says, why we need comfortable pair of shoes.
There you go.
And I believe it.
Yeah, you gotta have your sneakers. Can't have Crocs. I'm just kidding. You can have Crocs. Whatever. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I thought it was
fun. Do you ever look at your steps on your watch?
I don't.
Yeah,
but it will buzz me and say, you've reached your goal for today. Which I don't even know what the goal is.
No.
Lets
if anything, it's a standing goal or something. But no, I never
just
look at my
steps
steps
either. It's better
either.
to stand than sit.
It's true. That's true too. So that was the end of our segment. Hitting you guys with some nurse facts. We'll probably come back with a couple more each month. And we're going to end off with our other famous segment, the feverish take of the month. For this month, we are going to talk about how healthcare is more about the business than the patients. Do you agree?
Yeah. I think we kind of touched on that when we talked about nurse management. least I was heading more towards that direction.
Yeah, I don't think we said this statement, but we definitely brought up points that led people to believe that healthcare is more about the business end.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true. They'll take like hundreds of patients in on a unit if they could.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really care that like they're not getting care. They're just happy they're in the door.
I think my thing is, what bothers me is, when you leave, there's always like a survey that you fill out, and if you get one bad mark on the survey,
Oh yeah, the HCAHPS.
it comes back to you. Oh, someone complained that they had to wait a while. They had rung the call bell. They wanted a soda,
Yeah.
or a sandwich, and it took you a while to get in the room. And I want to say, okay, are you going to ask me what I was doing during that time? Because I
Right.
happen to have some high acuity patients that
probably
I was
aren't-
taking care of. That
They
I had
aren't
to
able
prioritize.
to. They aren't able to answer
Yeah.
the survey for
Like,
themselves.
It's a little
those
more
kind of
important
patients.
than a sandwich, because this guy stopped breathing. This family just lost their loved one. So I'm in there doing that. That, sorry, to me was more of a priority than getting this person over here a sandwich from the pantry.
Yeah.
And that's what bothers me. It's like, oh, well, it was a bad review. Oh, okay. Well, why don't you go ask the same guy who I did compressions on last night and is still alive? Why don't you ask his family how they feel?
Right.
What their review is, because I'm pretty sure they're going to say, I'm so thankful that you were here and my loved one's still here with me, or the person who lost their loved one to say, I'm so thankful you were here to be there at that time and help us through that, walk us through what happens next. They're probably going to have a different view than the one person who said, I had to wait a little long
Yeah, for sure.
for what I needed.
The crazy part is like you said, all it takes is one
One.
bad remark, and like bring it back to nurse management. They'll lecture you probably about 30 minutes about what this patient said, what you could do better, blah blah. But they'll never have the time to acknowledge like all the good you've done
Exactly.
During your shift. You could do 100 great things, but that one bad thing patients will remember. Patients will take the time to write a bad review for one bad thing you did compared to the other hundreds that you've done for them during their stay. And I've also had, this wasn't the CNO. This was a lady right below her, and we had like a work meeting about something, where she just happened to mention like, hey, like let's be real, guys. Like, this is a business. We need patients to have a reason to come to us. So that always kind of stuck with me. Of course I'm not gonna be like an asshole to patients just because I feel like it, but it's just odd that like you kind of have to keep in mind that in a way you're kind of upselling like your patient care to these people, when I'm sure like in reality they just want to get better and go home.
I think my thing is you have to just look at everything. Like, I get it's a business. I totally understand that. Everyone's got to get paid.
You got to get paid.
And I understand that. But I think you have to look at everything. You can't, like you said, you could do 100 good things.
Yeah.
And that should be addressed, too. Like, you're doing a great job. I saw you had this heavy assignment last night, and everyone's still good in the morning. You're still here. Great. I'm happy,
Yeah.
Good job. But that's not done enough. It's only, again, when there's one bad thing or one bad review, one complaint. And that's when the management takes the time to talk to you, and I don't like that. I don't think that's right.
No, for sure.
You gotta look at everything, or maybe say, okay, this person got a complaint, but let me look at the assignment that they had last night. Oh my gosh, they had all these high acuity patients. This was their one walkie-talkie. Well, maybe that's why they weren't around that much. They were kind
exactly.
of busy. They had 4 heavy patients and only 2 light patients.
Nurse manager is not going to take the time to look at that.
But you should.
No, of course.
Especially if you've been in that position before, boots on the ground, then you know better.
Hi, I'm right here with you. Don't worry. I get it.
I don't know.
So, yeah, I guess that's just how healthcare is. And, in nursing school, you don't learn that. You learn to take care of them, but you don't learn, like, the business end where it doesn't matter how good you do. No one's going to notice.
And at the end of the day, there's some people
will.
you do everything for. You've done the best job you can. And there's just some people out there that it's like, what could you have done more for me?
Yeah.
It's never enough.
And you got to live with that.
And that's just how they are.
So you definitely get like a little bit of a backbone when it comes to nursing eventually. So guess we'll wrap it up there. We spoke about a lot today, a lot of good stuff. I hope people gain something from this, at least from this episode. Any final thoughts?
No.
No, you're good.
Not today.
All right. Wear your mask, social distance. I'm still waiting for COVID to end in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
For those, when I say summer, maybe I'm saying like August.
No, you said June.
I'm
said
thinking
June
August, end of
episode.
August, by August 31st, maybe things will go back to normal. But that's just my take. We'll see what happens. I hope you guys stay well, stay safe. Give us a like, comment, subscribe. And that's it.
See you next time.
It's always nice talking to you, Liv.
Great talking to you, Kev.
All right. See you later.
Shining through the city with a little fucking soul. So I'ma light it up like dynamite. Whoa, bring a friend, join the crowd. Whoever wanna come along. Word up, talk, just move right up the wall. They're like, sky's the line, so we dance to the break of dawn.
Ladies and gentlemen, I got the medicine, so you should keep your eyes on the ball.
This is getting heavy. Can you hear the bass boom? I'm ready. Levies, chitlins, honey. Yeah, this bitch ching like money. And this go overload. I'm in today. I'm good to go. I'm down. You know I glow. And let's go. 'Cause I'm in the stars tonight. So watch me bring the fire, set the night light. Hey, shining through the city with a little fucking soul. So I'ma light it up like dynamite. Whoa, na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. Life is dynamite. Na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. Life is dynamite. Shining through the city with a little fucking soul. So I'ma light it up like dynamite. Whoa, na-na-na-na-na-na-na. Na-na-na-na-na-na-na. Na-na-na-na-na-na-na.